Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Men of Scarlet and Gray Live. As always, your host, Josh Schott, right here. You can follow me on Twitter at SchottJosh. And as always, I'm joined by fellow Men of the Scarlet and Gray writers. First, Jeremiah. Jeremiah, how you doing today?
Great, man. How are you?
Pretty good. Great to have you on. Andrew, how you doing?
Good. Can't complain. Got a good Week 1 win. Looking forward to another Week 2 victory over Virginia Tech.
And Chip, how's it going for you today?
Very well, thank you, and a great Labor Day weekend, and as Andrew just said, it's always great after a very satisfying Ohio State victory.
And, of course, the controversial Shannon Sommers with his controversial poll today. Shannon, how's it going other than the hate tweets?
Oh, loving life, loving life.
That's great to hear. We got a lot to talk about in today's show, including Ohio State's big victory over Navy this past week and all the Big Ten action from last week and upcoming this week. There's going to be a lot of different big games. And, of course, later in the show, we'll be joined by Jacob Emert, a Hokies beat writer for TechSideline.com, who will help us preview the big primetime game between the Buckeyes and Hokies. So first things first, guys, we're going to take a look at Ohio State's victory over Navy. They won 34-17. It was certainly an interesting game for sure. It was close to the first half for the Buckeyes pulled away in the second half. What's your guys' first thoughts on this? We'll start with you, Shannon.
For the first half, I can't say. I mean, yeah, I was a little concerned. I mean, what they say the stat was no touchdowns. They scored first time since 1911, I think. So, I mean, it was a little concerning. That offensive line, it couldn't hold water. But you knew going into halftime that Urban and the coaches were going to be able to make the proper adjustments, and they were going to come out swinging in the second half. And that's exactly what they did. And I think that I didn't say a single swear word until the second half on that third down that they didn't try reviewing, but that's besides the point.
Jeremiah, what did you think?
I thought it was a good opening weekend for a team that had a lot of inexperienced players to, go through the gauntlet of college football. Navy's a tough team that plays a tough offense that not many people are prepared for, and I think that our defense showed a lot of determination in that game. And even though they gave up a lot of rushing yards, they did a really good job holding the scoring down and keeping the Buckeyes in it until the offense was able to figure out what their identity was going to be.
Chip, Andrew, your thoughts? Any of you want to chime in?
Well, obviously, I'm kind of happy we don't have to play another triple option offense because, the first half defense struggled, but then obviously they made the adjustments they had to make and then got some stops. Second half they stepped up, so that was good to see.
Well, I was just going to say my compliments to Navy. I seem to recall certain someone predicting a 35-17 victory. That being said, it kind of came out the way I expected, to tell you the truth. Obviously, not happy giving up nearly 400 yards of rushing on the ground, but I do believe that Navy, when you look at Navy, the remainder of their schedules, their schedule for this season, it will not be completely surprising to me if Navy wins the remainder of their games because, as Ohio State showed the audience, the television audience, and I know Andrew was in attendance there, trying to learn how to defend that triple option with maybe a week is not the easiest thing in the world. And Ohio State had basically all summer to do that. This is, I guess, as kind of a tease promotion for an article that I believe is going to be on the blog tomorrow. Obviously, some of the things that Shannon talked about, the offensive line, the defense, some other things that were a concern, I wrote about for an article tomorrow. But again, anytime you walk away with a victory over a very talented Navy team, you have to take that, especially considering the 9 new offensive starters you have to take that as a positive going into week 2.
Absolutely, I have to agree there as well. I mean, the offensive line had their struggles in the first half, but they improved in the second half. And, I mean, that's just the way it is with this team. There's a lot of young, talented players that just simply need to get their feet wet. And once they do that, they're going to really get the wheels turning. And speaking of young players, I have to ask you guys about JT Barrett and his debut as the starting quarterback for the Buckeyes. He was 12 of 15 for 226 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, that one errant interception he threw in the end zone. I had to ask you guys what are your thoughts on his very first performance as the starter. We'll start with you, Jeremiah.
I thought that JT played really well. I mean, and if you compare his first game to that of the last 2 quarterbacks Ohio State started, Terrell Pryor and Braxton Miller, I think he's a more polished passer than either of those players were in their first year, maybe their career. He has a nice touch on the ball. He definitely is not the scrambler that either of those guys were. He's not going to make a lot of plays with his feet. I think he has the ability. I just don't think he needs to because he's able to read the defenses a little bit better and to find the open guys. He didn't have any bad passes, in my opinion. That interception, was probably an errant decision on his part. But he's a true a redshirt freshman. He's going to make some mistakes. But overall, I was really impressed with what he brought to the game.
Scarlet shirt freshman.
Have to point that out. You guys, Shannon, Chip, Andrew, if you want to chip in your thoughts, anything on Barrett's performance?
I think he played out. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Andrew.
I was going to say, I'm sorry, Shannon. I was going to say I was impressed, especially because this was his first game back in 2 years. So yeah. I mean, I think Buckeye fans should be pretty confident in JT, especially for his first game. I think Virginia Tech game he'll look a lot better too.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. They said that everybody's biggest concern was that he hasn't played in a game in 23 months, and how is he going to look? How rusty is he going to look? And he looked like he was in pretty much control the whole time. The only problem was in the beginning was him running for his life in that offensive line, not being able to stop anybody. But besides that, and like you said, that interception down into the end zone, that kind of was just him, twirling around, losing sight of the defenders, and just throwing the ball up. And you've seen Urban on the sideline talking about put more arc on the ball to get it farther in the back of the end zone. So that's just learning as a young kid.
Yeah, it's certainly. I mean, he's got to get better the more he does this. This repetition is it's great for him. I mean, he's got to get another great test against Virginia Tech this weekend. So, Chip, is there anything else you want to add about JT Barrett?
Absolutely, and just to kind of piggyback off some of the previous comments about the interception in the end zone, I was watching the game over at my friend Tim's home, who's a avid listener of the podcast and fan of the podcast, and we both said at the time when that unfortunate interception took place, it was kind of refreshing to see. Urban Meyer, you could see he was really. I think Coach Meyer even said something after the game that he counted back from 10. After that interception, because obviously the mistake and you took points off the board, maybe a touchdown, at least 3 points probably. But I was saying at the time that this is where JT Barrett needs coaching. He doesn't need screaming at this point. This is where again there's going to be some herky jerkiness to his game. I think Ohio State fans need to accept that and be prepared for that. I think that over the previous 2 quarterbacks, Andrew and others have already addressed the fact that the mobility with JT Barrett is not going to be Braxton Miller and it's not going to be Terrell Pryor. But that's because most quarterbacks are not gifted like that. So JT Barrett, I think, showed some tremendous poise considering it was a road start in his first game in 2 games, and I think Ohio State fans have a lot to look forward to this season, watching his maturation process.
Thank God he's not Joe Bowserman either. That's one thing.
Jeez, don't mention that name, please.
Thank God. I'll never that. I still have nightmares about that Nebraska game. I still have nightmares.
Oh my gosh!
It was
Couldn't hit the
horrible.
sideline. He couldn't hit the sideline that game.
Well, there was another performance. We'll get to that later of a quarterback that almost was Bowserman-like. But one more thing about the Buckeyes win over Navy. Who do you guys think really stood out to you? Had the best performance in that game? Because we know Urban was impressed by Rod Smith's blocking. That's why he got a lot more carries. But I was wondering what players stood out to you. We'll start with you, Chip.
I'm going to give it to Darren Lee. As somebody who was obviously, watched, I went to the spring game. Well, let's be honest. During the spring game, you're not going to see, too much in terms of, what the defense is going to be, ultimately doing in the fall, and especially they weren't going to be showing how they were going to defend against Navy. But I definitely think all of the accolades that Darren Lee received leading up to the Navy game. I thought that he obviously the fumble recovery that was led for a touchdown, but he had a wicked shot on Keenan Reynolds later in the game that was a crucial stop that, again, helped to kind of blunt any momentum that Navy had late in the game. So Darren Lee would definitely be my player of the game for the Buckeyes.
I'd like to add something on Darren Lee. I think it was around the second or third quarter. Obviously, the TV cameras didn't get this, but the offense was huddled up there in a timeout, and he ran over to the offensive huddle, and he got them hyped up a little bit.
That's a sign of a good teammate right there. I didn't. You obviously being at the game, you were able to catch that.
Yeah.
Jeremiah, Shannon, Andrew, even what players stood out to you?
For me, there was a lot of good young players out there. Curtis Samuel had a nice game. The one play on offense that stood out to most to me was not the traditional thing that you would celebrate, but Ezekiel Elliott had a block downfield on a long touchdown run where he absolutely pancaked this guy a good 15 yards off the line of scrimmage, and it was very impressive. And I think that went noticed by Coach Meyer, who also named Ezekiel Elliott one of his players of the week this week. So for me, Ezekiel Elliott had a really good game. So did Darren Lee. Tyvis Powell had a great game. But honestly, the defensive line learned so much for not getting their knees blown out this week. They were doing that on a down basis, and I thought they handled themselves really well and made a lot of plays, even though the style of offense that Navy did play.
Shannon?
I got to go with my boy Washington. We've been waiting for him to step up, and I saw a big step up in this game this week. And he was blowing some stuff up, and he was looking really good, getting in that backfield. Going against these traditional teams that we're going to start seeing, these traditional offenses, you're not going to be double-teaming anybody on this defensive line. And it's going to be so much fun watching this defensive line team off against these guys. And now that Adolphus is going to be, like, up there with Bosa and Bennett, and when Spence comes back, it's going to be insane. I can't wait.
Yeah.
That's a great point you bring up, Shannon. Adolphus Washington had a fantastic game. I really don't think he got enough credit for the performance he had in that game. And like you said, the defensive line is going to be very fun to watch. I mean, we're going to see that really the first time we're going to see it in full force in action this week against Virginia Tech, being we're facing the traditional offensive set now. Because going against triple option, you really don't get to see how great the defensive line was, but we'll get to see it this week. So that was the Buckeyes win over Navy, 34-17. We're going to take now a look at the Big Ten's performance in Week 1, going through the scores here. Thursday night, Minnesota beat Eastern Illinois 42-20. Rutgers beat Washington State 41-38. On Friday night, Michigan State beat Jacksonville State 45-7. The one game out of that stands out, of course, is Rutgers win over Washington State. I'll start with you, Shannon, because I know you watched it. What were your thoughts on Rutgers win over Washington State? Because I thought they looked pretty impressive.
Rutgers, they looked physical, they looked fast, and they looked like a Big Ten team. They were hitting guys, and they're helmet on the ball. They were taking guys down. Guys are getting up and just shaking their head like, wow, I just got stung. And that's Big Ten tackling right there. And for Rutgers in their first game to come out looking like a Big Ten team, I was thoroughly impressed. And to go into, go on the West Coast and play Power 5 school, and what were they calling that offense? The air raid show or something like that?
Yeah.
They're basically shutting it down. They're getting some plays off and everything, but I mean, I thought they did an outstanding job. They really impressed me.
I just want to add that I did predict Rutgers would win that game. I don't know if I was the only one who did, but I did. Thank you very much.
Nobody asked you.
Good pick. Good pick, Jeremiah.
Going through the rest of the scores now, Penn State beat UCF 26-24 on a last-second field goal. Nittany Lions just barely pulled that one out. Illinois beat Youngstown State 28-17. Indiana beat Indiana State 28-10. Iowa won 31-23 over Northern Iowa. Michigan State got their revenge on an FCS team, 52-14. Congratulations, guys. You crushed somebody you were supposed to crush. Purdue beat Western Michigan 43-34. Maryland beat James Madison 52-7. Nebraska 55-7 over Florida Atlantic. And Northwestern made a comeback against Cal to only lose by a touchdown 31-24. So, guys, any thoughts on any of those games I just rattled off? Because I'm saving one special game for last I want some thoughts on. But any thoughts on those games I ran down through?
In that Michigan State game, I was noticing that we were laughing beforehand saying that their offense, we're lucky if they score 17 points. And in all honesty, if their defense wasn't leaving guys wide open, I don't think Michigan State would have scored that many points. Because the Michigan State wide receivers were left wide open all night long. I mean, I think Joe Bowserman could have hit the guys that night.
I don't know.
Dad's a big fan of Joe.
I thought the Penn State game was a little eye-opening. I predicted Penn State would lose that game. I thought UCF would be better, even though they lost portals after last year, and they were a BCS winning team. So I thought they would play better than that. When they switched quarterbacks, it was a different game. But I was really impressed with the way Penn State played that entire game. They played like like Franklin, their coach Franklin coaches. They were emotional. They were supportive. It was an interesting thing to see. I don't know how good they are because once they did switch quarterbacks, it was a completely different game. And Penn State nearly lost that game. But to win that game in Ireland, I thought was a huge thing for their program, and they'll probably get like 10 more 4-star recruits out of it. So.
Andrew, did you catch any the other Big Ten games? I know you were at the Navy game, so you might not saw any.
I'm looking at the Iowa score now. I'm kind of surprised that game was so close. I thought Iowa would have came out with a convincing win, but
considering both picked them to win the Big Ten West, and I even said they might even go undefeated. So now I feel really sheepish.
Yeah, so I was a little surprised with that. I thought they would have won a little more convincingly.
Chip, you have any thoughts on any of those games?
Absolutely. I am not surprised that Iowa struggled with Northern Iowa, simply because I recall very clearly a few years ago Iowa having to block field goals by Northern Iowa to preserve a victory. And what is also not surprising to me, and what should be concerning to Tim Beckman's long-term employment, is Illinois' struggle against Youngstown State. I think that's kind of an indictment of what kind of a season Illinois is facing. Hopefully they will improve because, let's face it, the biggest opportunity the Big Ten had to gain national respect and recognition was lost when Wisconsin blew a lead against LSU on national television Saturday night.
I'm going to get to that in a second.
Okay.
I'm going to paint the pictures for that one now. LSU won 28-24 at Wisconsin. If you hadn't watched the game, this is what happened. Into the third quarter, Wisconsin leads 24-10. Fourth and short, LSU decides to do their fake punt they always like to do in games.
Everybody knew it was coming.
Everybody, except for Gary Anderson, of course. and LSU converts it. They march right down the field and they score, and they're right back in this game. The Badgers were never back in it. LSU had control the whole rest of the way. Badgers choked it away, plain and simple. And yet, the whole time this is happening, their leading running back, Melvin Gordon, is just sitting on the sidelines, completely fine, not hurt at all. And after the game, they asked Anderson, and I quote, he says, he was fine. I don't know why he didn't carry the ball more. You're the head coach of the freaking football team, and you leave one of your best players sitting on the sidelines. I don't get it. Now, the quarterback situation, I understand now. Now they said Stave's got his shoulder hurt, and he's got to be out indefinitely. Now we know why McAvoy was thrown in there, because McAvoy didn't look like he had any business being on a college football field.
No, he didn't.
In the second half. It was utterly ridiculous. Some of the dumbest football I've seen in a while, and I'll be surprised if anyone can top the stupidity for the rest of the year, because the Badgers had that game won, and they just choked it away. Your guys' thoughts. I had to get that off my chest, because that was just bugging the crap out of me.
Do you see why I put them at number 13 in my power poll now?
Exactly.
That's why.
Stupidity.
It was the coaches that lost that game. Your leading rusher had 140 yards, and he's sitting on the sideline. They could not stop him, and he's sitting on the sideline, and after the game, why is he not playing? You're the head coach. I don't know. Really?
Well, I bet he knows now, so.
Yeah.
If I was a Badger fan, I would be throwing stuff that night, because that was a win. That was a win right there, and they threw it away. Chip or Andrew, you got any thoughts on that horrendous game by the Badgers?
Poorly coached.
It's always a shame whenever coaching decisions or lack of decisions are what would cost you the game. I mean, if you line up against a team and they're just more talented than you, I don't think there's any shame in that. But Wisconsin fans can honestly think to themselves, we had this game won and we blew it. We gave it away. And that's the thing that just has to be the most galling for any Wisconsin fan when they remember back to this game as the rest of the season progresses.
Can I just add that this was typical Les Miles coaching? Get completely embarrassed for most of the game and then somehow pull something out of your butt and win a game that you have no right winning. I don't understand how the man keeps doing that. He is an awful football coach who has the greatest luck in the history of the world. I just don't get it at all. He just seems to do this time after time after time where he's getting embarrassed. And then he even said it at halftime. He's like, he had no doubt that they were going to come back and win. He didn't know why, but he had no doubt that they would. It was crazy.
He's the reason that there's no luck in Northeast Ohio. He took it with him.
I guess that.
He had to make a deal with somehow with the devil or something. I don't. That's a great point. The only time I remember his luck coming back on him was that time against Ole Miss where he spiked the ball with no time left on the clock. But moving on, that was the Big Ten for week one. Now we're going to get into our picks for this week. Before we get into the Big Ten slate, you got to take a look at two different national games. First, a big Pac-12 matchup between number 14 USC at number 13 Stanford. This is a huge game at the beginning of the season. Both teams certainly talented enough to make the college football playoffs at the end of the season. I think Stanford's going to win this game because I think their conservative play they'll grind down the Trojans and pull it out. So I will start off there with you, Shannon. Who do you think's going to win this game?
I'm going with USC on this one. They look too impressive this last weekend.
Jeremiah?
I'm going with USC as well. I think USC has something going special this year.
Chip?
I'm going to take Stanford. I just think even with the impressive win that USC had, it's a toss-up, but I just think I'm going to give Stanford the home field advantage and the fact that Stanford plays that traditional physical style. I think that's going to be the slight edge.
Andrew?
I have USC winning.
Another thing to keep in mind with Stanford is it stands out for me is they got Sanders' son, Barry Sanders' son, running back now. So, and they just keep turning out running backs there. But that's gonna be a really fun game to watch with a lot of big games this weekend. And then the other national game we're gonna take a look at is BYU at Texas. Now it's a little more interesting. Now the Longhorns starting quarterback Ash is now out with concussion. So it definitely helps the BYU Cougars here. We'll start with you, Jeremiah, since you're a BYU fan too. You think the Cougars go into Austin and pull off the win?
I'm a BYU fan living in Texas, so I should know most about this game, I guess.
Absolutely.
Texas not only is starting a new quarterback, but they have a new center as well. So, that's going to it could possibly cause some problems with handoffs, with hiking the ball and getting the play started. It'll be interesting to see how Swoops does. He was highly ranked coming out of high school, and he's supposed to be the savior for the Texas program. I think that Charlie Strong will put him in a position where he won't make mistakes. For BYU, Taysom Hill is an amazing football player. If you've not had a chance to see him play, he reminds me of a Johnny Football, where he is very quick on his feet. He makes good decisions when he's running the ball. He's not as polished of a passer as Johnny Football is, but he does bring a lot of energy to the game. This is a revenge game for Texas. They got annihilated last year by BYU at BYU, so you have to take that into account. And unfortunately for BYU, I just can't see them pulling off this win this year. I think Texas is going to be up for this game, and I think it'll be a close game, but I think that Texas ends up winning that game.
Chip?
I agree completely with Jeremiah. I think the revenge factor is going to play huge. I think Charlie Strong is a tremendous coach, even with all of the challenges that Texas is facing right now. With the David Ash injury, I think he'll have them ready to go, and I'm going to take Texas in a close one.
Andrew?
Despite the quarterback problem with Texas, I'm going to go with Texas too.
Oh, we lost Andrew there. Sounds like get cut off for Shannon.
Oh, I'm going to stay controversial. I'm going BYU.
Go Cougars.
Andrew, can you hear us now?
Yeah, poor Wi-Fi at school.
Who's your pick?
I was saying, despite Texas's problem with quarterback, I think they come pull out the victory.
I'm actually going to agree with Shannon here. I think the Cougars go on the road and pull off a surprising win. So there you go, Jeremiah. I have more faith in your team than you.
Wow.
We'll take a look at the Big Ten games now, and we'll start off with Akron at Penn State. Guys, who do you like here? We'll start off with Andrew.
I have to go with Penn State. They had a good win against UCF, so definitely Penn State.
Chip?
I'm going to go Penn State. I think that they will represent better than that team up north did last year against Akron.
Jeremiah?
I'm going to go with Penn State as well. I think it might be closer than we thought it would be. Akron is not a horrible team, but Penn State is trying to build something, and I think that Coach Franklin will have them prepared to go ahead and beat them by at least 3 touchdowns.
Shannon?
I think it's going to be a close one, too. They're going to have that hangover from traveling, but I think they're going to squeak it out. Penn State.
Yep, I like the Nittany Lions too. So Howard at Rutgers. Rutgers has got to blow them out, right, guys?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that one.
Howard lost to Akron 41-0 last week, so Rutgers is going to win that game easily.
It'll be a close one.
They should be playing teams like Howard. They need to stop that now. So hopefully they will.
They got Big Ten money now. They don't need to be messing around with FCS teams.
Oh, that's true.
Nope.
Central Michigan at Purdue. Did the Boilermakers win 2 in a row, guys? We'll start with you, Shannon.
No.
Wow. Jeremiah?
No, Purdue wins this game.
Chip?
I'm going to go Purdue.
Andrew?
I'm going with Purdue.
I'm going with the Chippewas. I think they're going to pull off the road win, the MAC win over the Big Ten.
And you said, wow, look at you.
Northern Illinois at Northwestern. I think this is a situation where the MAC team is favored. Chip, do you think the Huskies go on the road and beat the Wildcats, or the Wildcats rebound from their loss last week?
I think the Huskies are gonna take it to the Wildcats. I think it's gonna be a long season.
Andrew?
I agree with Chip. I think Northern Illinois comes in, and I think they beat Northwestern pretty good.
Jeremiah?
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go with Northwestern. I'm gonna say that they pull off this victory. I don't know how they're gonna do it, but I think they might get this win. I'm gonna go with Northwestern.
Shannon?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Northwestern on this one, too. I just think that they gained a little confidence almost, coming back on Cal. So I think they're going to build on something, and they might squeak this one out.
Well, I think I'm going to make some MAC friends because I'm going with Northern Illinois here, too. Another MAC team win over a Big Ten. So, sorry, Big Ten fans. I like the Huskies here to pull off the win. So, Western Illinois at Wisconsin. The Badgers can't choke this one, can they, guys? They're going to blow them out easily, right?
Yes.
They better.
Bonus points if you know what Western Illinois' mascot is, because I don't.
Catamounts? I don't know.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm Googling. Sorry, you guys keep going.
McNeese State at Nebraska. Another FCS opponent. How many points is Nebraska to hang there?
63.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
The Western Illinois Bulldogs.
Bulldogs.
They should have had 75 this last week if they didn't have so many penalties.
Yeah, Nebraska wins this one with a lot of points. Easily.
Western Kentucky at Illinois. I think this is an interesting game. Western Kentucky's coming off an 8-win season. Illinois doesn't look very chipper out of the box. Do the Illini hold on and win here, get the win here, or do the Hilltoppers go on the road and get the upset? Shannon.
I'm going with Illinois because they're away from the sweater vest. I told you last week that the sweater vest was going to be an influence. Nobody believed me. They're away from the sweater vest, Illinois.
Jeremiah?
I'm going Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky has the #1 passing offense in the country right now. They put up 569 yards last week. Illinois has a very bad pass defense. I think Western Kentucky wins this one in a rout, unfortunately, for Tim Beckman.
Nice upset pick. Chip?
I'm going to go with Illinois. I figure you can't look bad 2 weeks in a row if you're Tim Beckman, but I think it's going to be closer than Illinois fans would like to believe or expect.
Andrew? We lost Andrew, I think. I think Illini. I was really thinking about picking an upset here, but I think the Illini barely pulled out by a field goal. So Illini roll, I think. Ball State at Iowa. Does Iowa win 2 in a row, or does the Cardinals trip them up, guys? Iowa win.
I'm gonna take Iowa. I'm sorry, Ball State to upset Iowa. Excuse me.
All right.
Jeremiah?
I think Iowa's too talented for Ball State. Ball State had a little bit of trouble with Colgate last week, so I'm going to go with Iowa.
Shannon?
I know Iowa likes to play down to their competition, but Iowa needs this game in order to gain some kind of confidence. So I'm going with Iowa.
Andrew, are you back with us? Who do you like in Ball State or Iowa?
I have to go with Iowa. I'm pretty. I believe Iowa's pretty underrated, so I think Iowa wins.
I think the Hawkeyes will rebound this week and have a resounding win. So Middle Tennessee at Minnesota. The Golden Gophers roll, guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nah. Middle Tennessee tough. The Blue Raiders they won last week 61-7 over Savannah State.
They didn't give up a point until the last 8 minutes.
Yeah, but I think Jerry Kill's a great coach, so I'm going to go Minnesota. But I think it's going to be a lot closer than you guys are saying it's going to be.
I could see that. I could definitely see that being close. I think Gophers roll too, but Maryland at South Florida. I think this is going to be a blowout. South Florida is a wreck of a program, but what do you guys think? Do the Terps go on the road and get a road victory? We'll start with you, Andrew.
Yeah, I could see Maryland going on the road and beating South Florida. I could see that being one of their big non-conference wins.
For me, South Florida barely beat Western Carolina, an FCS team, last week, 36-31. Maryland is too talented. They've got too many great wide receivers, so Maryland wins this one easily.
Yeah, I agree.
Maryland.
All right, well, I think we all agree Maryland's got a roll. And now the two bigger games in the Big Ten this week. Michigan at Notre Dame, guys. Do the Wolverines go on the road and get the Domers, or do the Domers maintain their top 25 rankings? Shannon.
How many people are suspended for Notre Dame?
It's a good question. I can't keep track.
At least 5.
Well, that's my over and under. So if it's 5,
It's like choosing between, like, you don't really want to choose either team, do you?
no, you really don't. But well, it's the last year of it, and I think Brady Choke's playing for something. Dan, shut up. But
Big Ten chat.
yeah, but I hate to say it. I think the school up north pulls this one out.
Jeremiah.
It's a tough game to call. I honestly can't gauge how good Michigan is after that Appalachian State. Appalachian State was not good this year. It's not the same team that they faced in 2007. Neither was Michigan, though. Michigan was pretty impressive in their win. They ran the ball really well, passed the ball really well, played great defense. Oh, night game at Notre Dame. Michigan's had Notre Dame's number the last few years, for the most part. I'm going to go with Michigan when it gets this win.
Chip.
Tough one to call, especially again. The team up north, they didn't play a quality opponent in Appalachian State, and the Domers didn't really have a world beater when they dismantled Rice. So that's part of the reason why, like I said, it's difficult to call. I'm going to give it to the team up north with the hope that this is actually something that will help to boost Big Ten prestige. That's how I'm going to kind of do some twisted logic on that.
I agree with that completely. I hate that whole you need the Big Ten to be good for Ohio State to get credit. I don't agree with that, and I don't like it. But I'm just sick and tired of having to defend the Big Ten when they're mostly defenseless.
Andrew, who do you think wins?
I'm going to be different. I'm going to go with Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame beats Michigan.
Me and you are the only ones going with the Domers. I think the Domers. Pull it off at home. I think Everett Golson's going to be the difference maker in this game. So it'll be close as always. It always comes down to the last 30 seconds in this game because it's always wacky. So, and finally, the big top 25 versus top 25 matchup in the Big Ten around the country this week is College Game Day. Has got to be out in Eugene, Oregon for the Michigan State Spartans at the Oregon Ducks. It's a pretty big game, guys. I mean, this is a huge win for whoever comes out of this, and whoever loses still has a great shot at making playoffs at the end of the year because of the strength of schedule being factored into the playoff situation. So, Ducks or Sparty? We'll start with you, Chip.
Really tough to call, and I know Jeremiah hates the whole Big Ten national respect prestige angle. But this is, if there's any game that's even looming larger than last week's game, this is it in terms of the Big Ten needing a great, solid performance from Michigan State. And I think that Michigan State's going to give Oregon all that they can handle. And I'm going to give it to Oregon in a close one, but I'm thinking Oregon's going to walk away wounded, and I think this is going to impact the rest of their season after a close win over Michigan State.
Andrew, who do you like?
I have to go with Oregon with this one.
Shannon?
I'm going Michigan State because it always seems as much hype as Oregon gets, they always seem to choke. As much as everybody goes down on the Big Ten, the Pac-12 chokes just harder than the Big Ten. And Michigan State beat Stanford pretty good last year, and didn't Stanford beat Oregon last year?
Yes.
So I'm going Michigan State.
Jeremiah?
For me, looking at the stats from the Michigan State-Jacksonville State game, it was surprising to see how many yards they gave up to Jacksonville State. That kind of gives me a little worry about their defense. I think Oregon's going to be able to score on them. I was really impressed, though, with Michigan State's offense. I thought that Connor Cook played well. He was perfect, literally. I think he was 13 to 13 or something like that. The wide receivers are huge. They're, powerful. I think they'll be able to score on Oregon. I think Michigan State goes in there, plays Big Ten football, maybe surprises and throws the ball more than they run it, and is able to come out away with a victory. Really, honestly, the surprising thing is that Oregon is favored by, I think, 13.5 points. And that seems, outrageous to me, but I'm going to go with Michigan State with an upset victory.
This is I tossed and turned on this pick when I was making my predictions for every game in college football for tomorrow, and both teams have tons of weapons. Both teams are well coached. It's going to be a crazy game. It's going to be a fun game to watch, I think. Hopefully it gets wrapped up by the time Ohio State Virginia Tech gets going, but it's going to be close. It's going to be fun. I ended up, even though the Badgers broke my heart last week and made me have less trust in the Big Ten, I'm going to take the Sparty here. I think they're going to do it. They're going to win by a field goal. It's going to be a last-second field goal. The Sparty wins. So it's going to be a fun game to watch. Now we're going to take a look at Ohio State Virginia Tech, and our special guest has joined us now, Jacob Emert. He is a Hokies beat writer for TechSideline.com. You can follow him at Jacob Emert on Twitter. Jacob, welcome to Minnesota Scarlet and Gray Live, and thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us.
It's good to be here, guys. How you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Not a problem. Glad to talk some football.
Well, it's great to have you.
If I could get this out of the way early, a question that we're often asked by other teams is, what's a Buckeye? And, it's not that difficult to tell them what a Buckeye is, but I've always wondered, what's a Hokie?
Well, if I was a freshman orientation leader at Virginia Tech, the correct answer to that question would be I am. That's what they tell all the first-year students, which is as corny as it sounds. It dates back, the historical actual answer is it dates back to, the 1900s when they were originally the Fighting Gobblers and they were looking for a new mascot, and so there was a chant that started Hokie, Hokie, Hokie High, whatever, and so someone just submitted Hokie and they decided that would be a good name, and they were forever wrong.
That's a great story. I'm glad you shared that with us. I didn't know that. You learn something new every day. So, Jacob, I have to ask you about the Hokies. They had an opening. They opened their season with a win over William and Mary. What do you think of the Hokies' first game of the season and their prospects heading into this game?
Yeah, I think they look good. It was a 34-9 victory. They controlled the tempo, controlled the pace, controlled the ball most of the game. Wasn't really in doubt. Marched down the field, scored on the opening drive, and really never looked back. Obviously, Michael Brewer starting the first game for Tech under center. He transferred after graduating from Texas Tech. He was always a backup there. He started his first game last week since starting being a high school quarterback in Texas. He looked good, made a lot of good decisions. The running back, they kind of shifted the running back. The first-string guy by the name of J.C. Coleman didn't look too impressive. A couple of true freshmen had real good games, Shy McKenzie and Marshawn Williams, and they've jumped J.C. Coleman on the depth chart already, so they'll be the co-starters this week. So obviously it's tough to tell when you're playing an FCS opponent, even though William Mary is one of the better ones. They have a strong defense. But I think Tech had some promising things to look at moving forward.
What about? I know when I was watching the game, I was noticing, especially like when they got in the red zone, that the Hokies were having a problem with the defensive line. Is their offensive line suspect? Is the Hokies' offensive line suspect, or is William Mary's defensive line that good?
Right, and that's the one question mark of this game was what the Tech was able to do. Not even inside the red zone, like you said, but even inside the 5-yard line when they were just trying to. The Hokies, they have kind of an interesting thing with their offensive line. They're playing, obviously 5 guys, but a bunch of them have played before. One's a 6th-year senior, one's a redshirt senior. So it's not necessarily the guys who are inexperienced, but it's guys who are either playing different positions or they haven't played a ton in the past. Alongside, they have one redshirt sophomore at right guard, Augie Conti, a true sophomore at right tackle. So I think it's going to be interesting to see. We asked about that in the press conference on Monday. Tech has a weekly press conference with Frank Beamer and a couple players, and they gave kind of a vague answer about the red zone struggles, that maybe whether William and Mary just had an extra guy in the box or they had the guys there but they didn't necessarily block them. And obviously if they're not able to do that against William and Mary, Lord knows what will happen next week.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. I mean, what are your thoughts going against this defensive line for Ohio State?
And that's the I think going to be the most interesting matchup. If you look at it across the board, the X's and O's, it's going to be the Tech's offensive line against obviously the tremendous Ohio State defensive front, and even Frank Beamer, who lauded the play of the offensive line for Tech, said it's going to have to be a notch up. He said, quote unquote, a notch up, and everyone's like, well, it probably should be 3 or 4 notches up. It's going to be difficult. They'll have to get creative, try and do a couple of things to do whatever they can do to get those running backs some lanes and get Michael Brewer some time back there to throw the ball, because if not, it's going to be a long day.
Jacob, I had a question. I'm sorry. Jacob, I had a question regarding Bud Foster. Obviously, Virginia Tech through the long career of Coach Beamer has been a traditionally strong defense, and Coach Foster is obviously credited for putting out very strong and solid defenses. I guess the question I had is how much concern is there among the Virginia Tech fan base that eventually Coach Foster is going to finally get tired of waiting for Coach Beamer to retire, and Coach Foster goes elsewhere for a head coaching job of his own?
Surprisingly, I'd say there's not much concern there at all. Bud Foster's been with Frank, the exact numbers, but it's up close to be 20 years if it's not over that. And he's had offers. I mean, I think his name was linked to a job in Arkansas a couple years back. He's had offers, whether it's maybe not a formal offer, but his name's been linked to jobs, some big-time jobs, and he said he's happy being in Virginia Tech. Obviously, when you look at this Virginia Tech coaching staff, if you were to say that a successor to Frank Beamer, who just signed a 2-year extension last week, if you said a successor has to come from the inside the program, your top 2 choices would be Bud Foster or his Frank's son, Shane Beamer, who's the assistant head coach and the running backs coach. But I don't think people are worried about about Bud Foster leaving. He's always said he's where he wants to be. Obviously, he has said that he wants to be a head coach one day, but his choice to be a head coach is at Virginia Tech, and he's proven he'll pass up opportunities elsewhere.
If we could, let's talk about Bud Foster's defense this year, how you feel it compares to some of his past defenses, which have been just completely perfect defenses in years past. Do you think that this year's defense has the ability to keep his team moving in a positive direction to where they can actually get some of these sneaky wins that they probably shouldn't be getting?
Right, and yes, I do. I think they're trying to call themselves DBU now, and I think they may not be the standalone best defensive backfield in the country, but they have a case for it. Top 5, definitely top 10. I mean, last year they played 2 freshman cornerbacks, Kendall Fuller and Brendan Faison, and they were both standout. Faison's battling a little bit of an injury, but he looked good on Saturday. Fuller made a couple of tremendous breakdowns. I mean, those guys on the outside, you feel comfortable matching them up with about anybody. They're 2 linebackers. The linebacker spot is the question on this defense, and it's only because of inexperience. They lost Tariq Edwards and Jack Tyler, who were just tremendous last year. And you have Ronnie Van Dyke, who's battling an injury, but he could play in the outside linebacker spot this week. But it's going to be Chase Williams and Deion Clark in the linebackers. And then the defensive line, 2 new defensive ends, Daddy Nicholas and Kenna Canham. Daddy Nicholas is a freak athlete. He's really talented. He's new to football relative to everyone else on the field, but he's 6'3", 240, and he can run by people and hurt a lot of people on the football field. And then in the middle, you have Corey Marshall and Luther Maddie. Luther Maddie is a standout. He's a big guy. Not a big guy, rather 6'1", 293, but he's a guy who is experienced and he knows what he's doing there. And he's next to Corey Marshall, who left the team last year for a couple personal reasons. He was gone for a lot of the season, and he came back. But if the experience is coming, And if they can play Bud Foster's defense like everyone else has in the years past and just cycle through and do what their job is to do, there's no reason why they don't have the talent or the ability to execute and succeed.
I have to ask you about the other side of the ball now, Jacob. Michael Brewer, the transfer from Texas Tech. How's he adjusting into Virginia Tech's offense, and how much has it been adjusted for him?
Yeah, he looked really good, and obviously Tech fans were interested to see in what they would have to offer with Michael Brewer, because a couple of years of Logan Thomas, whose ceiling is through the roof, but he never got to those. He never met those expectations, but he looked really good. It was interesting what they were doing. They looked like they were doing a little bit more of an up-tempo offense, trying to get more plays per game, more than they had done in the past, and that's something Michael Brewer is comfortable with. Texas Tech is obviously running an up-tempo offense, but just some of the decisions Michael Brewer made, like I mentioned earlier, balls that he would throw away that maybe in the past other Tech quarterbacks, namely Logan Thomas, would have maybe forced. He looked comfortable in his system. He hit nine or 10 different receivers. He seemed like he knew what he was doing. There were no growing pains. It was impressive what he was able to do.
If you look at Shai McKenzie, who's a running back out of Pennsylvania, who Ohio State heavily recruited for a period of time, I was able to watch him play in high school, and I was really impressed with what he had. Last week he had 9 attempts for 106 yards and a touchdown. Is he your starter now?
It's going to be him, Shai McKenzie, and Marshawn Williams. They're listed as co-number 1 on the depth chart. Like I said, they jumped J.C. Coleman, so who gets that first carry, it's too early to say. I don't even know if they will say, but it's going to be the media met with the coaches today, and they said that it was going to be Shai McKenzie and Marshawn Williams getting the bulk of those carries. And, yeah, he looked really good. Marshawn Williams is more of a big back who likes to compare himself to Marshawn Lynch. He'll, run through you, run over you. But Shai McKenzie, his touchdown was a 38-yard run where it was impressive how quickly he hit the hole and bounced right outside, and he had good acceleration. So the two of them combined, I don't know whether you want to call them thunder and lightning like people down here are trying to, but they look good together.
I have to ask you, Jacob, what's the fans' feelings heading into this game against the Buckeyes? Is there a sense of optimism, or what's the pulse among the fans heading into this game?
I think so. I don't think that I think Virginia Tech is an educated fan base, and I've been around a couple, and I think they know that Ohio State is going to be very tough. They know they're one of the top programs in the country, and so they're not going in there necessarily expecting a blowout in either direction. But I think the win against William and Mary in the convincing fashion they did it in, there wasn't an issue. Say Michael Brewer threw 2 interceptions. He did throw 1 on a deflected pass, but say Michael Brewer threw 2 or 3 interceptions, we don't know how he's going to do, or someone just didn't execute their job as well as they should have, and that made a big question mark heading into the Ohio State game. There's not that there this week, so it's as good as they could feel, and I think, I don't know what the line is. I think last time I checked it's around 12, and I think most people think it's going to be closer than that, and I don't think maybe they're not expecting a victory, but I don't think it would shock many people.
I have to ask. Go ahead, Shannon.
I was going to say, do you think Brewer's going to be able to handle the pressure if Ohio State shuts down the running game of Virginia Tech?
I think it's going to be interesting, and he's the kind of guy, and he said this, and he showed it last weekend, that he's the kind of guy who has mobility in the pocket. He's shown his elusiveness, but he doesn't really want to run. He'll use his feet, and he threw his first touchdown pass was 12 yards, and he was getting pressured in the pocket and was able to move his feet and buy himself a couple extra seconds, and it looked like he had a little lane where he could have run, but he stepped back and found someone open in the back of the end zone. Now, 2 plays before that, it was a similar situation when he ran for 16 yards. So he is mobile. I think he can have some elusiveness in the pocket when he needs to be. But more to your question, if Virginia Tech is not able to run the ball, if they have to throw the ball way more than they have to, that's a problem area for the Hokies.
I have to ask you, everyone now, their predictions and their thoughts on how the game's going to play out. We'll start with our special guest, Jacob. What do you think the final score will be, and how do you think the game will play out?
I think it's going to be a lower scoring game, and I don't know what the over-under is. Like I said, I think the last time I checked the line was at 12. I think I could see this being a 4-point game. I think Ohio State does win it, but maybe 24-20, maybe 20-17 even, something around that area. Neither team's, I don't think, is going to run away with it, and I think it's going to be closer. And like I said, should Tech win by 3 or 4 points, I don't think that would shock me either.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close too. Jeremiah, what do you think? Your predictions?
Well, now my guest has me all worried. I was thinking about this game, and the issue for Virginia Tech is going to be it's a night game at Ohio State on a huge recruiting weekend. Everybody expects LeBron James and other stars to be there. Urban Meyer tends to shine in these type of environments, and he is able to get these football players pumped up for it. I think JT Barrett has another really good game. I do like Virginia Tech's DBs, but I just think Ohio State has too many weapons and too many opportunities to get the ball into guys' hands who have the speed. I think that Ohio State wins this game 28-17.
Shannon?
I've got one last question before I answer this.
Okay.
Did Virginia Tech look ahead to Ohio State when they played William & Mary, or do you think they actually gave William & Mary their full go?
That's tough to say because, we asked them at the press conferences and media days. You're always asking them, and they give you that coach speak answer of no, it's all William & Mary. And I don't think, looking at what they did, I don't think they opened up their whole playbook. I think there were some things that since they had the game in hand early, I don't think they let everything go for obviously when Ohio State will watch the tape. So I don't think they looked ahead.
All right, Shannon, what's your prediction?
My prediction is I'm controversial. And like I was saying on Twitter, and just the way that they were getting shut down in the red zone and everything, and Ohio State's probably going to have another one of those bend but don't break defenses. I see this being like a 34-14 kind of game. Ohio State.
Chip, your thoughts on the Hokie-Buckeye matchup?
I'm inclined to agree with our special guest, Jacob. I think this is going to be a more physical and closely contested game than I believe Ohio State fans want. I believe the fact that both teams' respective strengths lie along the defensive line is going to cause issues for both respective offenses, resulting in the lower score. But I do believe the nighttime, the atmosphere at Ohio Stadium, I think that's going to be enough to push Ohio State over the top in a close one. But I'm going to go Ohio State 20, Virginia Tech 17.
Andrew, what do you think?
I think we lost Andrew again.
Yeah, I don't think. He's not responding. So I think I'll give out my prediction now. I thought this was before we even talked to Jacob here. I thought this was going to be a very close game. The Hokies, they definitely got their weapons. The Buckeyes got their weapons, and it's going to be a tough game for both teams at night at prime time slot. As you mentioned, you guys mentioned. There's going to be LeBron's going to be there. It's going to be a three-ring circus, basically. I think it'll be a little higher scoring than you guys think. I'm going to go with Buckeyes 32, Hokies around 27. I think a late touchdown will push the Buckeyes over the top. There could be some sloppiness early on, I think, from both teams, but I think they'll at the end. It'll go right down the wire. It'll come down to who makes less mistakes. I think the Buckeyes will make less mistakes in this game. So, it sounds like we got Andrew back now.
I'm back.
Andrew, what do you think?
Sorry about that.
No problem. What's your thoughts on the Buckeyes-Hokies game?
I think JT, we're going to see a more developed JT. I think we really see big improvement. I think over time he'll just get better and better. So I think that there'll be less turnovers and the defense will look a lot better. Night game in the shoe. I have to go Ohio State 24, Virginia Tech 14.
I think we all agree it's going to, except for, I believe, who predicted about a 20-point victory?
That would be me, the controversial one.
The controversial one. Of course, I should have just assumed you, Shan, because you're controversial. Other than Shan, we all feel it's going to be a pretty close game. I think it's going to be exciting no matter what. It's a primetime game. It's always fun to watch a horseshoe game under the lights. So that's our wrapping up the show now. Be sure to check out manofthescarletandgray.com. That you may be viewing this podcast now, or check out any of our articles. Follow us on you'll see all our social media accounts there. We're on Twitter, Google+, Facebook. Be sure to follow us all on there. And of course, as mentioned last week on the show, we are now on iTunes. So if you want to subscribe to us on iTunes, you can find the link on the site for this article this video is currently playing in right now, or you can go to iTunes in the search box and just simply type in MotSAG Live. It should come right up for you. The third episode, this episode, will be on later tonight. So before we sign off, I got to thank Jacob Emert, beat writer for TechSideline.com, for joining us here for this podcast, taking time out of his schedule. Thank you, Jacob, for joining us, and we certainly appreciated your insight you provided.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob.
Thanks, Jacob.
It was fun.
Thank you once again, Jacob. It was a great show again. We'll be back same time, of course, 6 p.m. Eastern time every Tuesday. We sign off, guys. Any more thoughts?
No, I'm glad I know what a Hokie is now. So
Glad I could help.
But I look for an exciting one this weekend. I hope it'll be a good time.
Looking forward to the game. Have to give a shout out to my grandma who is in Virginia and is a Virginia Tech fan. Sorry, you're going to have to deal with a nice Ohio State win.
You're a mean grandson.
All right, that's our show, guys. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing to us on iTunes, and have a nice night.
Bucks!
OH.
Bye.